Will you follow me when the sky starts to change? Yeah, we won't be afraid. We'll never be the same again.
You're streaming with the Fantasy Follow. It's week 7, but hi, Travis Kelsey. Apparently, it's also National Tight End Day. We got a visitor. Well, welcome to the show, Travis. It starts right now. It's a big day of football. You can do this. Make those good decisions. There's never a better time than this week. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Follow. This is the TFF Live Sunday Pregame show, getting you ready for week 7. Hoping you can get through all these buys. It's a tough week, but either way, we're ready to go with some good fantasy football action. If you're here with us live, we're here for the live chat. We've got it pinned in your chat right now on YouTube. Drop us your fantasy football questions. We will answer your questions all show long. If you're watching on replay, please feel free to drop us a comment. But either way, let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'll get right into it. It is a tough week for buys. A lot of stuff to go through, a lot of good chats. Let's start out this week by taking a look back, as we always do, at the last week's action. We'll go through real quick, save some time here. No graphics for this week. Taking a look back at last week, Josh Allen was the leader at quarterback, 29.7. A little bit of a down week in scoring. Might see that again this week. Allen with 3 touchdowns, 355 through the air. Kirk Cousins was second, 28.5. Dak Prescott third, 27.8. Matthew Stafford fourth, 26.2. And Jalen Hurts fifth, 26.0 at the quarterback spot. Over at the wide receiver spot last week, it was a very nice week for CeeDee Lamb, 36.1 fantasy points in PPR scoring format. That was 149 yards, 9 catches on 11 targets, 2 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp has been great all year. Second place last week, 34.0, 12 targets, 9 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Nice game from Adam Thielen, 29.8, 11 catches on 13 targets. Jalen Waddle had 29.0 for Miami, 10 catches, 13 targets, 2 touchdowns. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones for Cleveland. Of course, that was last week. 4 catches on 5 targets, 101 yards with 2 touchdowns there at the wide receiver spot. At the running back spot, we had Derrick Henry, of course. Who else would be number one? Derrick Henry, 35.60 fantasy points for Tennessee, 143 yards on 20 attempts, 3 touchdowns, added a couple of catches for 13 yards as well. Leonard Fournette was second for Tampa Bay, 30.7 fantasy points, 81 yards on 22 attempts. Also, all 6 of his targets were catches, 6 catches, 46 yards there as well, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Jonathan Taylor has really been playing great as of late. See if that continues this week. Last week, 145 yards on 14 carries, added 1 catch on 2 targets. That was 28.80 fantasy points. Joe Mixon at fourth, 26.30 fantasy points, 94 on the ground, 59 through the air with a touchdown through the air as well. And then Darrell Henderson, 78 on the ground on 21 carries, 2 catches on 3 targets for 29 with a touchdown through the air for 24.7 there at the running back spot. And we saved the best for last on National Tight End Day. It was Noah Fant leading the way last week for Denver. We should have done the tight ends first, probably. Pretend we did the tight ends first. They deserve it, right? It's their day. Noah Fant last week, 24.70 fantasy points, 9 catches, 11 targets, 97 yards with a touchdown. Mike Gesicki, last week, 19.5 fantasy points, 8 catches, 9 targets, 115 yards. Travis Kelce, of course, we saw Travis already today, our visitor, 17.9 fantasy points, 8 catches on 11 targets. Mark Andrews for Baltimore, 17.80 fantasy points, 5 catches on 6 targets, 68 yards through the air with a touchdown. And O.J. Howard, in the absence of Rob Gronkowski for Tampa Bay. Gronkowski, again, out today. 6 catches on 7 targets, 49 yards with a touchdown, and that was 16.9 fantasy points there for O.J. Howard. All right, so that was last week's recap. We went through that really quick. Saves us plenty of time for all of the rest of everything we've got to go through today. We got a lot of actives and inactives to look at, shuffle through who's playing and who's not. So far, it looks like everybody, I don't think we've heard any real surprises so far, but we will, of course, take a look at that. Before we do that, let's go ahead and get to the early chats here, and let's start to run down what we got. Bill Romanowski is here. Welcome back, Bill. NFL legend Bill Romanowski on the stream, and JJ Watt is here. And JJ says the 2 best viewers. We got NFL royalty on the Fantasy Foul. How about that, everybody? Welcome to the stream. Bill says howdy to JJ, and hi to me as well. And let me see what else we got here. We got the first chat. We'll get these in, and then we'll go through actives and inactives after that. Starting out with Ilias Giftopoulos, one of our regulars. And also, I have to say, Ilias has to be one of the historically earliest, almost all the time when Ilias is with us. He's like one of the very first questions in there. So welcome back, Ilias Giftopoulos, to the stream. Debo or Fournette in PPR? Also, should I play Waller, Higbee, or Gesicki in PPR? All right, let's put up some stats. I'm confident. You never know. Sometimes confidence doesn't matter, but I'm somewhat confident that I have the right graphics loaded today. You know, these things happen sometimes. But let's take a look. Fantasy points to the wide receiver spot on the left side of your screen. We'll start out with Debo Samuel. This is such a tough week with buys. There are going to be so many weird decisions this week. But that's what fantasy football is all about. San Francisco home against Indianapolis. That is the Sunday night tonight. The matchup numbers say, where does Indy fall on the list? 9th. So that's a good matchup for Debo Samuel. 9th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spots. The running back spot for Fournette, that is home against Chicago. Chicago sits at 21st in terms of fantasy points to the running back spot. It's PPR, and a lot of times I tend to feel like Chicago games end up on the lower scoring side of things. Just these no good, no offense cut games. Chicago just trying to grind out the clock. I probably like the potential with San Fran a little bit better. Garoppolo should be back, although who knows injury situation, how that works out. But the fact that it's PPR, I think the matchup is better for Debo. I think these two guys are probably in a reasonably similar area in terms of volume. I mean, Fournette, you've been expecting to be the guy getting the most of it there, but Debo's been getting a good amount of volume there for San Fran as well. I probably like to go with Debo here. He's been playing pretty well. So has Fournette. I can't fault you either way on this one. As far as the Waller, Higbee, Gesicki, Waller's a player that we're going to have to look at what's the word I'm trying to think of? Reports. Holy cow. Good way to start the show. It sounds like there's a reasonable chance that Waller doesn't play this week. That's what it's sounding like from some of the other shows so far that we've heard this morning. So that's something to keep an eye on. Here's the deal. If you have to pick these guys, Waller, the biggest game is 4:05 Eastern time. Let's see. Higbee for the Rams is also 4:05 Eastern time, and Gesicki is early game against Atlanta. So we keep that in mind when we look at the numbers and the matchups, because if you want to try to play Waller, of course, Waller is the top guy out of these guys by a lot, I think. You're going to need to have a backup plan in place. The good news is that both of those other guys are not playing in the first game. So at least you have something to fall back on if you need to here. If you were trying to go with Waller, you still have Higbee there. At any rate, we'll look at the matchups. Las Vegas home against Philly. Left side of your screen, fantasy points to the tight end spot. Philadelphia sits at number 8, so that is a good matchup for Waller there. Higbee for the Rams, home against Detroit. Not going to be quite as high for Detroit. 20th, they're about middle of the road. And then Gesicki for the Miami Dolphins against Atlanta. Atlanta, let's see where they fall. 19th. So the best matchup is Waller. The best player is Waller. Your only real concern is how bad is his injury status. And I can't say that I've actually looked that up. So why don't I look that up right now while we have the opportunity to do that and see what Yahoo says about his report. Let's see here. Darren Waller. See if my computer actually cooperates. If I can spell the name Waller right, it'll be helpful. That's better. All right, let's see. Obviously, it's a questionable tag. Here comes the Yahoo report, and this was from today. ESPN Adam Schefter reports Darren Waller doesn't feel great and will not know if he was able to play until pregame warmups. So that is not a good start to this one. Let's see what else it says here. Latest from Schefter doesn't sound promising. The latest from Schefter does not sound promising, and a streaming option should be in order for fantasy teams that are currently counting on Waller. If he manages to suit up, Waller would still be a top 5 tight end and a solid match with the Eagles. We talked about that already. Yeah, for sure. If you're going to try to play Waller, this is the fact that you have that backup option B really makes a huge difference. And then it basically boils down to whether or not you want to take a chance on the injury status and how healthy he is for the game. It doesn't sound like a good report. I think if you're going to go with the other two guys, I probably trust Higbee over Gesicki just overall, although Gesicki has been playing well. The quarterback situation in Miami with Tua back in, and some of the Gesicki's good games are with Jacoby Brissett, and some of them Tua kind of was not there in some Tua games. I think early in the season, at least one I want to recall that he really does like a disappearing act. So I don't think that you can't go with Gesicki. He's been playing well enough lately. I personally, this is not data-based. This is just my personal thoughts here. I like Higbee overall as a more consistent play. What I do want to look up is their numbers. Gesicki is currently, let's see here. I want the entire season. Gesicki currently falls at tight end 8 for the year. And let's see. Waller, of course, is tight end 4, and Higbee is tight end 13. So there's a significant difference there between Gesicki and Higbee. If we look at the numbers in the past couple of weeks, target-wise, he's pretty much been there right along. Fantasy point-wise, 3 out of the last 4 games over double digits. In fact, 19, 17, 8, and 20 in the last 4. Higbee for the Rams, taking a look at his targets, a little bit less in the last 4 games, 5, 6, 2, and 5. Only one of the last 3 in double digits and 2 of the 6 overall for the season. So I guess all that being said, that's kind of why we look at a lot of information here, because, again, this fantasy football thing is all about opinions. I by no means, I always say this, feel like I'm the only opinion out there. And so I like to back up and try to, kind of analyze a little bit more data than just what do I think. Because clearly what I thought right away was I like Higbee better. And then when you look at the data does not say that right now. The matchups between Higbee and Gesicki are reasonably close, I think was what we looked at here, right? The Rams against Detroit was 20. And Miami against Atlanta is 19. So they're right in the same range. Based on recent production, if you're going to go with that as your main influence in making this choice, I think Gesicki is probably, if you don't want to play Waller, it does look like Gesicki, the data is there. Obviously anything can ever happen in fantasy football. But if you want to try to play Waller, the better matchup, and if you're okay with taking the chance on the injury there, you have Higbee as a backup plan. I think this could be one of those situations where you let the early games play out if you want to go that way. See what you're at, where you're at in terms of your actual matchup and what you need. If you need to go for a ceiling play, it could be Waller. If you need to go for, stay away from the injury concerns, make sure you don't have a guy that ends up out, then that would be Higbee. But either way, I think that Gesicki would be a very reasonable start based on what he's done, despite the way my thoughts on Gesicki. That's my own personal opinion. Based on the data and based on the matchups, if you don't want to go Waller, I think you certainly can go Gesicki. I might take Gesicki over Higbee based on data at this point. Higbee would simply be your backup plan if you wanted to play Waller. It's going to be personal choice on your part. If it were me, it's hard to sit down Darren Waller, but again, you're not going to know that status until later on. Hope that helps you out there, Elias. That's a lot of roundabout information there, but I hope some of that kind of leads you in the direction. I would never want to sit Darren Waller if I didn't have to, but understand that situation. Good luck to you, Elias, whichever guy you end up going with there, or whichever guys. Hope they crush it for you. Bill Roman says, my fantasy team is misfits this week. Go Tua. So you certainly would like to see Mike Gesicki have a nice day, because that means that Tua is probably also going to have a nice day. So we'll see how that works. We got Blammo time on the stream. Blammo time is here. You say howdy. Hope all is well. Howdy, Blammo time. You say the weather in Tampa has me thinking about taking out Chris Godwin at flex and putting in Daryl Williams. we can look at some matchup data to see if that helps you out as well there at Blammo time. Taking a look at Tampa Bay, home against Chicago. This is the same game on both sides of this. Fantasy to the wide receiver spot, Chicago currently sits at 14. On the other side of this matchup, the running back spot, Chicago, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is going to be a little lower, 25th. The difference here is that obviously Tampa, you expect to be tougher against the run. Certainly Daryl Williams is not who I'm looking at. I'm thinking of Damian Williams. I want Daryl Williams from the Chiefs. There's so many Williamses out there. Chiefs at Tennessee. How about the matchup numbers for that one? Tennessee is currently 22nd on the matchup. I actually don't think that this is unreasonable, even if there wasn't weather, Blammo time. I like I've said before, I like having a running back in my flex spot when possible. I feel like that gives you a more consistent level of production overall. Certainly Chris Godwin is very worthy of a start here as well. But you did see Daryl Williams basically get all of the work last week in his role there. And let me take a look at his numbers to see if that helps us out. It might take me a minute to find him because he's going to be farther down the list here. Let's see here. Daryl Williams. He's actually running back 33 for the season somehow with only like one game of actual starting. 21 carries last week for Williams, 62 yards, 4 targets, 3 catches, 2 touchdowns through the air, 24 fantasy points. There's going to be some interesting thoughts when Clyde Edwards-Helaire returns about what is Daryl Williams' role continue to be in this offense, because he seemed to be pretty all right. And there was some talk about him even earlier in the year when things were a little bit more of a struggle for CEH. I don't think this is a bad thought for you, Blammo time, regardless of the weather. And the weather kind of even bolsters it a little bit more based on what Daryl Williams did last week. You would expect, I don't know that you would expect necessarily a running game script for Kansas City in this game against Tennessee. It's hard to say what Tennessee's going to do. They lost to the Jets and they beat the Bills. So you don't know what you're going to get there. On the other side of that, the Tampa Bay game, again, I feel like in that Chicago-Tampa Bay game, there's so many Chicago games that you turn them on and you're like, the score is 7-3 and it's the end of the first half. Like, it's just nothing going on in these games, and I understand that. So I might feel like this is a decent situation to take a shot there on Daryl Williams. But I would say you guys know your rosters as well as anybody. Blammo time. Hope that helps you out with the thoughts, and hope whichever guy you go with there that they do crush it for you. Glad to see you in the 6 picks game. I'll talk about in 1 second. We'll do one more chat, and then we'll get to a couple of the things here before we get back to more chats for the rest of the show. We got Lou DDD. Welcome to the stream, Lou DDD. Looks like you might be a new viewer. Glad to have you. Would you drop Russell Gage for Quez Watkins or Pascal? Really deep league. Let's take a look at some numbers here. I can get these up on my screen to see where they all fall at right now. I definitely think that dropping Russell Gage, I don't see any issue with that because I'm not sure that there's been much of anything there for Gage this year. He was obviously had some injury concerns. Taking a look at where they fall. Quez Watkins, currently wide receiver 57 in a PPR format. Let me see who else. Zach Pascal, currently wide receiver 49 in a PPR format. And I always reference PPR because I figured that is what most people are playing. And who was the last guy that I'm looking for here? Gage. Yeah, he's going to be way down the list. Russell Gage. Come on. Did I miss him or am I certainly? Oh, my goodness. He is wide receiver 145 right now. Obviously, there's been some injury concerns there with Gage, and not sure really what his status is on the way back. But he has not played since week 2 and really did not do much in either of the first 2 weeks, 8 fantasy points in week 2. I certainly think that is a player that is cuttable even in a deep league. Who do I like of those other 2 guys better? I don't know how much separates them from each other in terms of what they've done. If you look at the numbers, I'm looking at Watkins. You read down his target list for the year, it goes like this: 3, 2, 2, 7, 3, 5. And his points goes 5, 14, 7, 6, 8, 9. So only 1 week in double digits. Compare that to Zach Pascal and take a look at what he's done. My instinct is saying Pascal. The targets haven't been quite, last week weren't as good. But overall for the year, 5, 6, 7, 5, 5, and then 1. Again, that was against Houston. You know the deal against Houston where if teams are up big, they're not needing to throw the ball as much. Fantasy points for Pascal, 20, 15, 5, 8, 8, and 0. In terms of, if I look at it this way, which offense do you feel better about right now? Philadelphia's offense or Indy's? You're hearing a lot of things about concerns with Hurts. I mean, from a fantasy standpoint, there's no concern with Jalen Hurts, in my opinion. But in Philadelphia, they're playing real football, so I understand why they're having the reports that they're having. I probably think that the Indy offense looks to be trending in a better direction right now. Upcoming matchups for them: San Fran this week, Tennessee, Jets, Jacksonville, Buffalo, Tampa Bay, Houston. They got some decent matchups in there, but on the platform that I'm looking on right now, none of them show up in the green, meaning that they are a top matchup at this very point. And Watkins, I'll look at that same piece of information. Really not much there. In week 8, one game in the red against Detroit, and then in week 11, New Orleans green. This week against Las Vegas. We'll do one more thing. We'll compare their actual matchups for this week to see if that helps you with the decision. Perhaps you're looking to make that decision for this week. I'm sorry, that's tight ends here. Wide receivers. Watkins, Philadelphia against Vegas, 27th. So that's 6th fewest fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver spot by Las Vegas. And Pascal for Indy against San Fran. They sit at 17th, middle of the road, but still the better matchup of the two if you are perhaps looking for this particular week to get through your buys. So I think all points kind of lead towards Pascal there to me. Probably someone that you can trust a little bit further on down the line. If you want to compare that to Atlanta game against Miami in terms of the matchup for Gage, Miami sits at 3rd most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. I don't know if Xavier Howard is back. I know he has been banged up, but I can't say for sure that I even know if Russell Gage, I'm going to call him really quick on a report here just to see what his status is. I would assume that he's back. Yeah, he doesn't have a designation, so he's definitely back. Looking for just any Yahoo reports that give you any additional information here to make us think otherwise. He returned to practice on Monday, so it does not look like the injury is that much of a concern here. I think that until Russell Gage does something, I don't know what value he has on your team. You're taking a chance on starting him based on the fact that he has not seen much this year and hasn't had much production. If it was me, I'd probably favor Pascal out of all of these guys if you're going to make this move. And I probably feel like I like that offense a little bit better in I do in Philadelphia. Those are my thoughts on what bring me to that choice. But I do definitely think Russell Gage is a player that you can drop at this point and try to pick up someone that might be more to your advantage. Thank you, Lou D for the chat. Glad to have you here and hope that helped you out. All right, let's do this. Before we get to the rest of the chats here, let's put up a couple of things. First, let's go through and take a look at our inactives over on my other screen. If there is anybody who stands out that we are not perhaps aware of right now, the first game, Washington and Green Bay. As this is loading over here, Washington, let's see, week 7 inactives. Nobody stands out there, so Antonio Gibson should be fine to go in that game. On the Green Bay side, nothing there as well. Next game in line is Kansas City and Tennessee. Julio Jones was expected to play there, and let's see if he shows up on the injury report. He does not. And then on the other side of that game, it would be Kansas City. Of course, no CEH again. Don't see anybody else on that list that stands out. Keep going down the line. Atlanta and Miami. Let's see if Xavier Howard is out. He's not listed on the inactive list, and I don't know if they put him on IR. I don't believe that they did. So that means Xavier Howard for Miami. Perhaps the defense against Atlanta is somebody that you're streaming today. Nobody on the Atlanta side looks to be out. Who else do we have next here? Jets and New England. Let's see what we got here. Jets and New England. Of course, nothing to see there for the Jets. And New England has probably listed everybody that you could possibly imagine. Ramondre Stevenson is out. Perhaps that makes a difference for you for the Patriots. Just going to go through the early games. Carolina and the Giants. This one, of course, is a lot of people to deal with on the Giants side. Of course, no Saquon Barkley. Kenny Galladay is out. Sterling Shepard is out. Kadarius Toney is out. So that does mean that Darius Slayton is available. There's not that many people to go to there. Devontae Booker, in terms of your running backs, is also going to be in play again this week for the Giants. Not as great of a matchup against Carolina. A little bit tougher, and Carolina not allowing as many points to the running backs, at least. I know I looked up that again. No Christian McCaffrey this week. Don't see much else on the Carolina side other than Terrace Marshall is out. Not sure if that impacts you at all. Cincinnati at Baltimore. No Latavius Murray for Baltimore this week. And no Sammy Watkins as well. So we certainly think that Bateman is again in play in terms of your receivers, and perhaps Devontae Freeman is a name that we've heard to get more action this week for more on the Cincinnati side of things. Nobody to speak of there. It's so weird with so many buys looking at this screen of inactives. I keep looking over here and thinking that there's teams missing. Well, yeah, there are teams missing. There's 6 teams on buy, and they're all the teams you have all your players on. So, yeah, there's a lot of teams missing. At any rate, that's all the early games. So those are the actives, inactives to keep an eye on. And before we go through after that, let's go ahead and take a look at our 6 picks game. We'll put up some information for you as well. Want to let all you know about this game that's going on right now. Here is the thumbnail that you're looking for this week. 6 fantasy matchups. You're going to go ahead and pick those winners. No cost or anything like that, but it's a season-long deal where we keep the standings. So you get to show off your fantasy football skills. A bunch of you guys have already been in there and made your picks for this week. The rules are very simple. Find this video. The link is in the description area below, so you can click on that link right now if you want to go make your picks for this week. Picks will be open until 1 o'clock Eastern time. Very simple. Make your picks in the comment section on that video using PPR scoring based on who you think will have the fantasy scoring day in each of those 6 matchups that occur within the same games. Again, we keep the standings all season long. And in week 6, it was Vansco. Perfect. 5-0, leading the way. And Vansco currently is also the overall leader, so he extended his lead, this leaderboard, with a minimum of 2 weeks. And we keep the standings by win percentage because we know different players will play different amounts of weeks. So you see the numbers there. Vansco in the lead, Michael McFarland in second, and Bill Romanowski in third. You have a little bit of time to make those picks before the game starts today. So again, the description area has the link below. You can get over there and make your 6 picks and show off your fantasy football skills. We will add the banner at the bottom of the screen and leave that running as long as our graphics allow it. Sometimes we have to switch out picks here. But again, 6 picks is available, and hope you guys are enjoying that game, and go over there and get in there and climb up that leaderboard. All right, next up in line on the chat's Bill Romanowski. Storm near Tampa breaks up before game time. Good to know from our chief meteorologist, Bill Romanowski. Thank you, Bill. Carlos Orozco is up. Better options than Myles Gaskin, full PPR. I feel like I can trust Myles Gaskin at this point. He had that one big game, and there was some hope there, but other than that, it's been really non-existent this year. Who are better options? I guess my question is, Carlos, do you mean better options that are available on the waiver wire, or just better options in general? In terms of the waiver wire itself, I would probably, I don't know how many of these, this is a tough week with buys, how many of these guys are still available for you, but I probably trust J.D. McKissic in this matchup for the Washington football team more, with Antonio Gibson a little bit banged up, and you know that McKissic's going to be the pass-catching back there playing against Green Bay this week. Green Bay is number 17 in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back spot, but you would think the game script would favor McKissic in this game. There's a good chance that Green Bay's Washington has not been playing all that well on defense, and therefore they would have to kind of turn to the pass game. That's kind of what happened last week. He had 10 targets against Kansas City, 8 catches. So that would be a name that I would look at out there. I think you could certainly probably Khalil Herbert may still be available. You're taking a little bit more of a chance on the fact that he's probably still going to be splitting with Daryl Williams in Chicago. But that is a name that might be out there. I think that we've probably seen Herbert cut in a lot of leagues with Williams, expected to play this week back from protocols. Those are kind of the top 2 names that I have listed. Again, it's tough at the running back spot to find players that are viable, that are available out there. Perhaps you look at a guy like Nyheim Hines might be available in your league. Again, it's a game script play for Hines in terms of whether or not they end up having to throw the ball. Similar to McKissic, I would feel less like I like the San Francisco matchup in terms of that happening than I would liking the Washington Green Bay matchup. If I scroll down the screen here to see what other players are out there that might be available to you that I think could make a difference this week. Guys that you might have that are on the fringe along near where Gaskin is, guy like Mike Davis. I might go with a guy like Jamal Williams for Detroit, who are in play. If Devontae Freeman is a name that we've heard with no Latavius Murray. Again, there's a lot of players in that backfield for Baltimore, but you're taking a chance there at things working out for you. I might even look towards A.J. Dillon if he's available. Probably not available in as many leagues. In the platform I'm looking for now, it looks like he's rostered in 66% of all leagues. This is not Yahoo, so I'm not sure where those numbers are. But if I looked on Yahoo, I don't know if I have that up on my screen. I do not. At any rate, these are just some names to think about. Perhaps Devontae Booker is available for you still. Probably not, but I would fire him up this week over Gaskin, given the fact that Saquon Barkley is out. Other names that are further down the list, I don't know that there are any other names here that I really see that I like in terms of being in play. You could possibly think about trying to take a flyer on Rashad Penny from the Seattle Seahawks, who is, I believe, was expected to be back from IR, but don't know if the final word was if he is going to be back. Again, that's a Monday night game, so that's a tough one because you wouldn't really have any backup plan. But it did sound like Alex Collins was a little bit banged up. I'm checking the report on Penny to see what the expectation was. Seahawks did designate him to return from injured reserve. Penny says, this is from Yahoo report, Penny says he's revved up and excited to return Monday night, assuming he's officially activated from injured reserve prior to kickoff. So we won't really know that. But yes, that is an option for you there that might be sneaky is the word, I guess. A little bit more risky because we don't know exactly what's going to happen there. But those are some different to think of, Carlos. I think any of those guys, I think you're trusting pretty much anybody over Gaskin at this point. I just don't think that we've seen what we need to see. Again, it's a tough with all the buys. If you have to go that direction, I certainly can understand it. But those are some thoughts, Carlos. Hope that some of that helps you out there, and hope whichever guys you go there, hope they crush it for you. Blammo time responding to Bill Romanowski, the weather app. This is one of the best weather discussions we've had on the FC Follow. Although Blammo does not appear to be happy with his own weather app. Forecasted rain starting at 5, and it's a 4 p.m. game. So we will see what happens there. We got a chat up from Brickitecture, like architecture, like Brickitecture, I think is the way I'm trying to say this name. Tell me if I got that right, Brick, and glad to have you. Looks like you're a new viewer, so welcome to the stream. I'll take this opportunity to say, for those of you that might be new viewers, if you enjoy our content, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you can get those notifications whenever we have new content. And for all of you guys that have been with us right over, even if you're new, again, if you enjoy our content here, feel free to drop us a like. The likes and the subscribes, they really do help out the channel a ton. So we do appreciate all of you that are regulars that have been with us for many of these weeks, and also those of you that are new. Glad to have you on the stream. Try to take the opportunity to mention that when we can. The chat from Brickitecture here is, would you start Julio Jones or Robbie Anderson this week, full PPR? Let's take a look at some matchups. A tricky question here, of course, because of the injury status of Julio Jones. I can definitely say that I, this morning, have asked myself this same question in a couple of spots over Julio Jones and what to do. Let's see the matchups here, if it helps you out. I almost said Atlanta. That's not anymore the way it is. The matchup is good for Tennessee against Kansas City here. Kansas City fantasy points to the wide receiver spots. 20. This is the weird thing, is that they only fall in 22nd, but all we've heard about all year is how Kansas City has allowed a lot of passing game results. So I'm not sure how those numbers square up, the fact that they're that low. Robbie Anderson for Carolina against the Giants. The Giants sitting at 12th. So the matchup edge is there for Anderson. I have a feeling that this Carolina Giants game is going to end up with Giants playing poorly and game script for Carolina favoring the run game. That's just my personal feelings. You guys out there in the chat might have thoughts on that as well, but there's a lot swirling around with the Giants right now, and so many players out injured. I don't know how that's going to go well for them. That doesn't look good there. I don't know how much that can influence your decision here. If we take a look at some stats, we'll call up Robbie Anderson, because I do believe he has had a little production in recent weeks than the way he started the season. It's, of course, of note because of the fact that you may not really feel like you can trust, and I don't know that I feel like I can really trust Julio Jones at this point. There's just simply too many games that we've seen him leave due to injury this season and last season, and for whatever reason, he does not seem to actually just take the time to let injury heal at this point. That's just the way the outlook looks to me. Again, I'm looking for Robbie Anderson on the list, and of course, there he is. He is currently wide receiver 62 for the season, and if we take a look at his numbers a little bit, what he's been doing, target-wise, a couple of down games early in the season, but he has had, in order, these are his 6 games, 3 targets. 3, 6, 2, 11, 7, 11. You feel a lot better about the targets more recently. Fantasy points throughout the season as we go: 13, 7, 2, 10, 5, and 10. So those numbers make you feel a little bit better. I will say this: he's, out of the targets that he's had, not really a good amount of catches here. 11 for 5 in week 4. 7 for 2 in week 5, 11 for 3 in week 6. Those can't really be very quality targets from Sam Darnold there if those are only the amount of catches that he's had. That's pretty bad. That's in the last 3 weeks, 6, 5, 11, and 8. 19 of his 29 targets have not been catches. That's a lot. Even so, I don't know that you have a choice in this situation unless you – the better matchup is Anderson. So I was about to say unless you feel like you need to take a flyer on Julio if you perhaps need a bigger game, but the matchup numbers not there. I would expect Tennessee to need to throw the ball more against Kansas City. So that would impact you. I think Anderson is definitely, based on the injury, the safer play here. So this might be a situation where you take a look at your opponent and decide, are you favored to win? And if so, the worst thing would be being favored to win and then all of a sudden having a Julio 0 slot in there and cost you your matchup, whereas a Robbie Anderson 6 might have won it for you, or 8, or whatever the case may be. So that would be something to think about there. Again, this for play for Anderson. If you are perhaps trailing, your decision becomes a little bit more complicated because, again, the matchup is better for Anderson. I think probably overall, I guess what I'm leading to is Anderson might be my pick here out of these guys, and just give it a shot and see what happens. Hope for the best. Not really a good situation on either side there, brick and texture, but hope that helps you out. And then, as I always say, hope whichever guy you pick there, hope they crush it for you. All right, Blammo time is continuing the weather on the 9s here on the Fantasy Football today. Our chief meteorologists, Bill Romanowski and Mo Time, are giving all of your weather information. We appreciate that. Not Tom is here. Welcome back, Not Tom. Is Waller starting, or should I start Peoples-Jones? We read the report a little earlier that was on Yahoo. It doesn't look good. What I've heard on show so far today doesn't sound good. So the answer is, who knows? We don't really know if we know the answer to this one. I'm not sure. I think you might mean Ricky Seals-Jones. Donovan Peoples-Jones has already played for Cleveland. I probably, if you have Ricky Seals-Jones, if you look at these matchups here, again, Waller, it's a good matchup, but anytime there's an injury concern, it might be reasonable to stay away if you have a decent option to replace him with. For where we see them for Las Vegas, home against Philly, fantasy points to the tight end spot, left side of your screen, 8th for Philadelphia, and Ricky Seals-Jones for Washington against Green Bay at 14th. So the matchup is not a whole lot worse. Seals-Jones has seen reasonable volume there in that offense. And again, this is likely to be game script favoring the pass for Washington against Green Bay. A lot of things in your favor here. The problem, obviously, Waller plays at 4:05 for Vegas, and Ricky Seals-Jones is at 1 o'clock. If it were me, especially if you're favored to win, probably go ahead and go with Ricky Seals-Jones in this situation. Again, a 0 is not going to do much for you. And since you don't really have, unless you have a viable backup plan for Waller there, without really knowing the answer for sure, whether or not he's going to play, what we're hearing so far, it doesn't sound good. The report I read on Yahoo did not sound good. Hopefully that's enough information to lead you in the direction that you want to go there. Now, obviously anything can happen with these players, but that's kind of the way I would look at it. Hope that helps you out. Not Tom, and welcome back. Glad to have you on the stream again. Rob Navarro is here. Welcome, Rob. You say one of our regular Navarro. You say Brandon Cooks or Mike Davis, flex PPR. Let's look at some matchups. I know Davis is, I believe, has a pretty good matchup here for Atlanta, but we start with Cooks for Houston. Again, you expect Houston to have to throw the ball a lot against Arizona. Perhaps Arizona plays them tough on D. I feel like they might today. But nonetheless, the left side screen, fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Arizona sits at 11th. Pretty good matchup there for Brandon Cooks. Cooks has obviously played well. He was a little bit on a downslide, but picked up a little bit more last week. Running back spot, fantasy points to running backs. Atlanta at Miami. That's a 1 o'clock game. The Arizona-Houston game is a 4:25 game. In terms of Miami, let's see, where do they fall? 4th most fantasy points to the running back spots. Your concern, obviously, here is Cordero Patterson, and how does that impact Mike Davis? That pretty much has been your concern all season if you are rostering Mike Davis. But if you take a look, and we'll look at these numbers, currently Cordero Patterson is running back 10 in a PPR format, and Mike Davis, I believe, has been relatively consistent. He's only running back 34, But if you look at his fantasy production, I want to say he's been right along the line. Yeah, 10, 13, 11, 11, 12. That's a very reasonable floor, I would say. In a good matchup, you would hope for, similar volume that gets him to his floor, and then possibly he gets the touchdown because the matchup is so good. That gets you a nice game from Davis. His rushes have been right around the same range, 15, 9, 12, 13, 13, and he has been getting some targets, 6, 7, 4, 2, 5. I don't dislike Mike Davis this week. I don't know that you expect to have, I would say you probably have the higher ceiling is probably Cooks. Cooks currently wide receiver 17. But you're taking a look at, you got to compare that with the fact that what happens if Arizona shuts them down on defense. Hard to say what that's going to be there. But Cooks' fantasy points in order this year, 18, 23, 21, 10, 5, and 18. The targets have been there right along. 13 targets last week. They were a little bit on a downside, like I said. But you would expect the volume to be there. Again, a nicer in terms of last week, 13 targets, 9 catches. That's nicer than like what we saw from Robbie Anderson. So you feel more comfortable there with a guy like Cooks. I think this is probably for you a matchup play, Rob Navarro. Again, I like to talk about, make sure and take a look at your opponent and see if there are any factors that impact this for you. Is there anybody on the other side, like perhaps your opponent is playing Calvin Ridley? If that happens to be a high-scoring game, you want to make sure that you get some of those points. Those are ways that I would look at this. I think that Mike Davis is probably more of the floor play. And I think that Cooks is probably giving you the better ceiling. If you like the matchups, I probably like the Mike Davis matchup better here. Again, I do think this week where, if Davis falls into the end zone and also sees the same amount of rush work that he's seen, that probably leads to a nice floor with a potential, at least a median game. Cooks give you the better upside, but again, against Arizona, who's been tough. My instinct on this Houston-Arizona game, there's a lot of revenge stuff going on in this game with, of course, DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt's on the stream. J.J., tell us what you think about this game. We know you're here today, J.J. I have a weird feeling that Arizona tries to really step on the pedal against Houston in this game for whatever reason. That could be good or that could be bad for the pass catcher. It could be a very bad offensive day for Houston, or it could mean that Cooks, they simply have to throw the ball a ton to try to catch up here. So I guess it's kind of going to come down to opinion for you, Rob, on which way you think that goes. For me, I think this is close, being the fact that it's PPR, a bit leaning towards Cooks because of the ceiling. Again, I like having running backs in my flex. So I personally I might go with Davis here, but I might just be not as high Cooks as some players. He certainly has played well this year. There's a lot of different info there that didn't necessarily say which way I feel. The matchup is there for Davis. I might just trust him. If it was me, I might trust the matchup in Davis. So I don't know. I think I've said both sides. So Rob, I see another chat from you. So hopefully this next chat from you, I can give you a better answer than that. I think, for me, I probably pick Davis. It doesn't hurt that I have Davis going in one of my rosters this week as well. So I'm a little bit more familiar with him as well. And Rob Navarro says hello as well. And Bill Romanowski says hi back to Rob. And next up, we already talked about J.J. Watt is here. J.J., are you guys going to shut down Houston today? I mean, is this going to be a situation where your defense just lets them get away with nothing here? I just have a feeling it might be that way. I like Arizona as a streaming defense this week. Let's talk about your chat question that you have here for. You say Tyler Boyd, Rondell Moore, Chase Edmonds, Darnell Mooney, pick one, full PPR. Let's take a look at some matchups to help you out. Tyler Boyd, again, a lot of these matchups and these questions today are a little more growing like with all these teams on bye, but this is what we have to do. The NFL decided to put 6 top teams on bye all at the same time. So we thank them for that as fantasy football players. It's made things interesting, to say the least. At any rate, Tyler Boyd against Baltimore, Cincinnati, 1:00 game. Baltimore sits at 26th. So that's the 7th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. I like the potential with Boyd there, although with both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, Boyd's volume has gone down, and that makes it tough. Rondell Moore for Arizona, to me, up and down that offense. A lot of these players up and down in terms of their usage in this offense. So I don't know instinct-wise if I would want to go Rondell Moore, but we'll look at the matchup. Houston, 28, so that's 5th fewest. The matchup not that great there. the side of that, the running back there, let's look at Mooney first because we already have that up on the screen. So Chicago against Tampa Bay. Certainly Tampa Bay you'd think is more vulnerable to the pass game. Certainly fantasy-wise, the number is better. 7th there on the left side of your screen in terms of fantasy points to the wide receivers. So you like that matchup a little bit better. But again, the Chicago offense is sputtering at best. Is that a good word? With Justin Fields back there. And I think for sure trying to keep things simple. This is going to be a weird game because if they try to keep things simple by running the ball against a tough Tampa run defense, they're probably going to have to throw the ball. I don't dislike Mooney here. And then Chase Edmonds for Arizona. This might be the guy that I might think stands out here the most. The matchup against Houston is good. 8th most fantasy points to the running back spot. Of course, if Houston ends up trailing in this game, Arizona, Edmonds is the guy that you expect to be more of the pass-catching option out of the backfield with as the run game option. So if game script goes that way, that would be the chance that you're taking. But what I will do is I will look up recent stats for Edmonds. I believe he had some injury concerns recently. Been pretty consistent throughout the year. I don't know if there are any reports on injury-wise. Let's see if that... let's don't see anything about injury. If you're looking at his numbers, it was his first 4 games all in double digits. The last 2 under 4 and 8. The rushing attempts were down. The targets were pretty much in the same range. So again, I do think that there is a chance that Arizona isn't forced to throw it out of the backfield. I don't know if there's a significantly better option among your guys that you're listing here to make it not worth the shot. I mean, you understand that could happen, but do you like Boyd more than Edmonds? I'm not sure. Do you like Moore more than Edmonds? I'm not sure. The only guy here I think potentially you could talk about is Mooney because of the fact that Tampa Bay is more vulnerable to the pass. But if that happens, you are taking the chance, which might be a chance taking on the quarterback play in Chicago working out for you here. I think Mooney is a player that I don't dislike, but again, we haven't seen Chicago been able to really support their wide receivers. Certainly Allen Robinson has been, pick a word that describes what Allen Robinson has been. 54th right now, wide receiver 54 for Robinson. And in terms of Mooney, again, Mooney has seemed to be targeted a little bit from Justin Fields. I'm looking for him where he falls on the list, and he can't be that far down. So is Mooney actually ahead of Allen Robinson? Let's see if I can find him here on my list. Let's see, 44th. Mooney is actually ahead of Allen Robinson. That is awful for those of us who drafted Allen Robinson. The targets we've seen for Mooney have been actually pretty good. 7, 8, 4, 7, 5, 8 in order. Again, those have been different quarterbacks. But fantasy points in order 8, 13, 2, 19, 7, 16. Well, this is why I like to look through information as we talk about these things because I think that tells you that Mooney, based on the data, is playable. Based on the matchup, is playable. Based on what we expect against Tampa Bay, all of these things in his favor. Edmonds is the guy who I might trust more without looking into those little nuances. But in that particular game, when you compare these two, we always talk about these 4 things: ability, volume, matchup, and game script in that order. This is one of those that actually makes it down to the game script. You kind of expect Arizona to be beating Houston, and that means James Conner, not Chase Edmonds. And you kind of expect Tampa to be beating Chicago, and we know that Tampa is tough against the run, but vulnerable against the pass. All of those things tell you Mooney. So if we're strictly deciding between those two based on everything that I've said, I don't know how it's not Mooney here. There's always chances to be taken here in fantasy football. This is a little bit of a chance, but is a chance based on data that a calculated decision that could pay off. Again, I like to say fantasy football is a lot like poker. You make the best decisions that you can, and then you see what cards come out. Sometimes you make the decisions and they don't work out, but you long run by making the right decisions over the course of a certain amount of time that, you make it there, even if some of them don't work out the way that you want. I think, JJ, what I'm getting at here is PPR, I'd probably go with Mooney here, believe it or not. That's kind of what the data says. And again, it's easier to analyze these things when, for me, I know that when I have a decision of my own to make, it's tougher because I feel more invested in my team. I'm like, no, but I got this guy and he was gonna be good. I drafted him high. Then when I start looking from the outside and it's not my team and just analyze the data, a lot of times I'll even go back and change my matchups after talking through these chats with you guys based on what we look at. And from the outside looking in, without feeling invested in the fact that Chase Edmonds has been really good, for this particular week, it's very possible that it could be Mooney. So I give you that information. I leave that decision up to you, JJ. You know your roster as well as anybody. Make the decision that is best for you. But I don't think that Mooney, bad thought here, with the potential to turn out a big game and see what happens. Hope that helps you out, JJ, and good luck, whichever guys you pick there. Hope they crush it for you. All right, I'm going to try to keep up with the chats here so that we don't get anybody. We're not too bad here. Getting closer to time. Already went through the actives and actives, so that is good. Blake Deacon is here. Welcome to the stream. I don't recall, Blake, if you've been on. The name looks familiar. You might be a return viewer. If not, if you were new, welcome either way. You say, who would you start in the flex for PPR? Brandon Ayuk, Darnell Mooney, or Bateman? I think the first thing I'll do, we'll give you matchups here to look at. First thing I'll do is I'll say this. I don't feel like I can trust Brandon Ayuk until you see a good game from him first. Despite the fact that this is one of the times that, you have projections like on whatever platform you're playing for. And I look at those projections and I kind of like want to look away because I think I saw a projection of like 12 on Yahoo for Brandon Ayuk this week. I want to say that's what I saw. And I think that was PPR format. I mean, man, he's only had one game over 12. Like, how is he projected at 12? Like, fantasy points in order this year for Ayuk: 0, 2, 15, 3, 5. What are we basing 12 on here, people? Like, I get it. Like, we thought starting the year that Brandon Ayuk was going to be a viable player, but when have we seen it so far? The most targets he had was against Green Bay, week 3, 6. His targets in order are 0, 2, 6, 3, 4. I can't take Brandon Ayuk over those other guys based on like the information we just talked about with Mooney. So I'm going to take him out of the equation right away. We can look at the matchup against, for comparison's sake, left side of your screen there. Indy, they sit at, where do they fall here? 9th. So the matchup is good. I get it. Just, I need to see it first before I trust Brandon Ayuk. The worst thing you want is a really stinker to cost you your matchup. Mooney, I think, is very reasonable against Tampa Bay for all the reasons that we talked about. The fantasy matchup is better. They sit at 7th there in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Bateman for Baltimore is interesting against Cincinnati. Let's see where the matchup falls here. Cincinnati at 21st. The matchup not as good. Baltimore has certainly been leaning on the pass game more. I like Bateman moving forward. It's just kind of a guess in terms of what he gets in that offense this week. I want to look up his stats. Tougher to find a player who hasn't played as much because I'm scrolling in order of like stats for the season. And so he's going to be much farther down the line. Let's see. Did I find him yet? No. Bateman currently, wide receiver 148. Don't take that into consideration, obviously. He's played one game, 6 targets, 4 catches, 29 yards, 7 fantasy points in that game. With no Sammy Watkins there, Baltimore, that leads you to believe that there's more volume potential there for Bateman. I think this one for you is probably who do you trust more? Which offense do you trust? Because to me, it's between Mooney and Bateman of these two. I think if it were me personally, because you simply have more data to go on for Mooney, that would probably be my pick. But Bateman, there's a lot of buzz, I would say, about him for Baltimore. And again, with no Sammy Watkins there and the running backs kind of banged up a little bit, you would think there's a good chance for some volume there for Bateman. So I would think those two are close because to me, I trust the Baltimore offense a little bit more. I think potentially this could be a higher scoring game than we expect against Cincinnati. I like Cincinnati's offense this year. So that is in your favor. When it's all said and done, if it were me, and again, opinion and data kind of can be different. If it were me, I'd probably go Mooney here. I like to go with guys that I actually know more about. And when we went through that run of targets, the targets were pretty good. I know you can't really trust the Chicago offense quite as much, but against the Tampa Bay team that's giving up more fantasy points to the wide receiver, the matchup is better than the matchup is for Baltimore against Cincinnati. So all of those factors probably make me go Mooney, but I can't fault you if you just no, I can't stand Chicago's offense. I'm going Bateman. I can certainly understand that, but that's why we talk these things through. Hope that helps you out there, Blake, whichever guy you go there. Hope they crush it for you. Rob Navarro, how's it going? Good luck, everyone. Good luck to you, Rob, as well. Cash Money Wilson is here, one of our frequent 6 picks players. My team is on their bye week, but ready for some football. Your entire team is on. Oh, your football team. Your real team is on bye. I got it. Pittsburgh. It's not bad. Brick texture. Yep, that's correct on the name. Good. I'm glad I got it right there. JJ Watt. Hope you have a great day as I look for revenge against Houston today. That's great, JJ. I like it. Cash Money Wilson. I would. Mooney, Blake, Ayuk hasn't been getting a lot of touches. Same for Bateman. That is the answer to Blake Deacons, and so that's kind of in line with what I was thinking there as well. Appreciate the thought there, Cash Money. Rob Navarro, pick 2, please. PPR, Godwin, Mooney, McLaurin, and Renfro. Let's look at matchups. I know what my instinct says right off the bat, but I'll look at the matchups first. Tampa against Chicago, 14th in terms of fantasy to the wide receiver spot there for Chicago. Mooney for Chicago against Tampa Bay, higher up as we talked about, 7th. So better matchup there. But again, this is why these decisions are different for everybody, because when you go to these factors that I talk about, again, ability, volume, matchup, game script, in that order. When I say ability, what I'm talking about here, which player do you feel like is a higher tier of player? And therefore, if it's a higher tier of player, even if the matchup isn't quite as good, then you would expect them to be able to overcome some matchups. You might just trust them more overall. That's kind of situation between those 2 guys that I just mentioned, Godwin and Mooney. Like, Mooney's matchup is better, but who do you trust more? Which offense do you trust more between Chicago and Tampa Bay? That might, even though I just talked a lot about Mooney, like, this is different. Every matchup is different. His roster is different. So of those 2, I probably favor Godwin between those players, even though there's a lot of mouths to feed. You know, all those things. There's a reason why Chris Godwin is drafted as high as he was, and Mooney's probably a guy you picked up off the waiver. Terry McLaurin, I like a whole lot. Washington to Green Bay. The numbers tell you that Green Bay, where do they sit? 25th. So not as good of a matchup. 8th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. But again, Terry McLaurin, I mean, there's a reason why you drafted him where you drafted him. I like Terry McLaurin. I'm going to be hard-pressed to sit those guys that I feel like are higher-tier players in these sorts of situations. Hunter Renfro for Vegas against Philadelphia, 4th fewest fantasy points there to the wide receiver spot. I'll probably take Renfro out of this equation first. I think that means it's between those other guys, and if I look at – what I want to look at is stats recently for McLaurin, just to see if there's anything that makes us say that this is the guy we don't want to use as much because of less targets. Here's the targets in order for 6 games for McLaurin. 4, 14, 7, 13, 11, 8. Good amount of volume. His fantasy points, 10, 28, 10, 30, 9, and 7. The last 2 games have been down. Heineke has not played great in the last 2 games. I think he's played well enough to make you feel okay about the offense prior to that, and the opportunity to kind of turn that around here. So I don't dislike McLaurin. Again, we talked about this with like a J.D. McKissick. You would think that Green Bay is going to have their way offensively with Washington. You would think that they're going to be putting up some points that forces Washington to have to throw the ball to kind of play catch-up here. I don't think I can sit comfortably. If it were me, I don't think I feel good about sitting Terry McLaurin for Darnell Mooney, given Justin Fields at quarterback for Chicago, knowing that Chicago probably still wants to keep it simple, which means run the ball if they can. They might not be able to. They might have to throw the ball more. There's potential there for Mooney. There's obviously, of course, potential there for Renfro. I don't want to discount him entirely. Renfro's numbers, I believe I have. Yeah, I do have these. I've made note of these already. Targets for Renfro across over the course of the season, 9, 7, 6, 8, 8, 5, very even. Fantasy points 13, 11, 19, 17, 10. I think that says 10. That might say 12. And then 7. So very even. He's currently wide receiver 33. But nonetheless, I still am not going to slate him ahead of those other guys. The only guy that I could see sliding in there possibly, if you really like the matchup, is Mooney. And I don't know how you would decide which guy, Godwin or McLaurin, to replace in that situation. A lot of here tell me if it were me, I probably would go Godwin and McLaurin. So in order, Godwin, McLaurin, 1A, 1B, Mooney, 3, and Renfro, 4. I don't know who I would put 2 there. I probably would put Godwin. I actually might put Terry McLaurin as 1. I don't know. It's tough because of the quarterback situation. Either way, I'll put McLaurin 2. I'll put Godwin 1 because of Tom Brady, the situation there. I'll put Mooney at 3 and Renfro at 4. Hope that helps you out there, Rob. We talked through a lot of stuff on these, but that's kind of the way I like these. I'm not really in favor of looking at a question and just saying that guy and that guy and not telling you anything. Like, hopefully some of the information we're giving you points you in a direction that's best for you. That's kind of the way I like to look at decisions in fantasy football. So I hope that helps you out there, Rob. Cash Money says Godwin is a must start, and McLaurin will put up more than Renfro and Mooney. So Cash Money, kind of the same thing. We're along the same lines here so far. Cash Money on 11. Lucius Varenas 44. Welcome back, Lucius, one of our regulars. Devontae Freeman or J.D. McKissick, playing a bit from behind, so I need someone with high upside. Thanks as always. My int says that if you want high upside here, it's McKissick. Freeman, here's our numbers. Running back, fantasy points to the running back spot. Baltimore at home against Cincinnati, 1 o'clock. Cincinnati currently at 19th, so right in the middle of the road there. No Latavius Murray. I don't know if Tyson, let me see if there's Tyson Williams was a healthy scratch, I believe, last week, right? If I'm not mistaken. He is not listed on the list for Baltimore as a scratch this week. Looking at one of my other platforms here to see if he was expected to play. I don't see anything about Tyson Williams. So let me see if there's a report that I can call up on him, because my reason for doing this is this. There's a lot being made kind of the fact that, where is he? Of the fact that Latavius Murray is out and how that impacts Freeman, but it's not like Freeman's the only other guy in that backfield. So I'm looking for a report here on Yahoo. No reports here about Tyson Williams, so you got to figure that means that he is just fine, right? That means you've got Tyson Williams, you've got Devontae Freeman, you've got potentially Lev Bell. Freeman has played well. I think he had a better game last week in terms of fantasy-wise. Let me look up his numbers really quick to see if that helps us out at all. Currently running back 67. And last week, let's see what he had. 9 rushes for 53 yards. 2 targets, didn't catch either one of them. Did have 1 touchdown, 11 fantasy points. I hate to say Freeman, because my thought here is that it feels like chasing the points a little bit. Because when you look at the data and all the other people in play, yes, it could be Freeman that has a good day, but there's just so many other players that impact that backfield there that I feel like there's less concern over McKissick here, because of the fact that we know that Antonio Gibson is a little banged up. We know that McKissick had a huge day of 10 targets last week. You would expect the game script to be similar this week against Green Bay, that they would have to throw the ball. Washington has not played well defensively, and if so, that means game script favored McKissick. Again, we talk about these 4 factors: ability, matchup, ability, volume, matchup, game script, in that order. If I thought that Freeman had a more clear edge in terms of volume, that would make a difference, because that factor is taken into consideration before the matchup. I don't think that I think that way. And again, in terms of the matchup itself, the matchup actually does favor McKissick, right? Is that what I said? Cincinnati sits at 19, and it's not that much difference, about the same. All those things being said, I think you're looking for a higher upside play here. I think it's McKissick over Freeman, because I think there are too many things that could go the wrong way for Freeman, and there's not as many things that could go the wrong way for McKissick, if that makes any sense. And if you see, especially if this is PPR, I don't know if you said that, Lucius, but if this is PPR, I think that definitely makes you look towards McKissick. That would be my thoughts here, and hope that does help you out some. Whichever guy you go with there, hope they crush it for you, Lucius. And good luck in your fantasy week. Cash Money says, ready for some tight end week. Also, it is National Tight End Day today. So where is our friend? Let's see. Let me get our friend Travis Kelce is back. Travis Kelce is very happy to be here with us on National Tight End Day. Let's go ahead and just leave Travis on the screen for a little while, and we'll leave him up there in honor of National Tight End Day. Actually, I can't do that, because as soon as I put the next chat up, it's gonna go right over that. So thank you, Travis, for being here. Amongst all of the, say hi to JJ Watt, who is also here. NFL legend Bill Romanowski is here. A lot of the people that you know from their football days are here. So have you with us there, Travis. Let's take a look at the next chat up here. We got one from Bozo Bob Wart 333. Welcome to the stream, Bozo, a new viewer, I believe. Glad to have you with us. You say Joe Burrow or Derek Carr today. Let's look at some data. My instinct is to say Joe Burrow here as a player I might trust more. Again, instinct and data are different. That's why we look at all this information. The matchup there for Cincinnati on the road, Baltimore. Fantasy points to the quarterback spot on the left side of your screen there. Baltimore sits at 22nd. So just below the halfway point. Las Vegas, home against Philadelphia. Philadelphia sits at where? Where do we find them? 21st. So right about in the same range. Again, there is a possible injury concern to Darren Waller. So you take one of Derek Carr's top targets out today, and does that make a difference? Despite the matchup against Baltimore, expect Baltimore to be a tough defensive team, but I really have liked the offensive play of Cincinnati this year. I think you've got some great wide receivers there. Jamar Chase is looking like a great rookie player. Joe, probably the guy that I trust more overall. But if you look at where they sit, and I always like to do this because all of this data makes a difference. Where do they sit overall for the year? Let's take a look. Joe Burrow is quarterback 13 for the year, averaging 19.5 fantasy points. And Derek Carr is actually quarterback 14, averaging 19.4. So they are pretty even, obviously. Of course, usually if you guys have these questions, there's a reason, and that means they're pretty even. Burrow has had last 3 games all 20 or more. And prior to that, 2 of those 3 games were 19s. So his fantasy points in order 19, 13, 19, 22, 20, and 24. Pretty consistent there. Derek Carr, if we look at the same numbers in order, 25, 24, 22, 15, 8, and 22. Not quite as consistent, and even his big games were not all that much bigger than Joe Burrow's big games. So that being said, I'll probably take the consistency here over the little bit more up and down of Carr, and also the offense that I feel a little bit better about, and that is simply the Cincinnati offense that I just like a little bit better. So for me, it's Joe Burrow. I can see you going the other way, Bozo Bobwart, if you just simply like Carr better. But for me, I'd probably pick Burrow in that situation and hope that helps you out. And hope whichever guy you go with there, hope that they crush it for you. And again, as a new viewer, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you guys with us and look forward to seeing you on future streams as well. JJ Watt, I do have Waller. Would you ride with Howard, Braid? What I would do is I would try to figure out which of these guys gives you a backup plan. Because the matchup is good for Waller. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but I'll put that back up on the screen. Fantasy points to the tight spot. Let's see here. Where are we? Vegas, Philadelphia, 4:00 game. Philadelphia sits at number 8 in terms of fantasy points to tight ends. The report does not look good about whether or not he's going to play. So I think you have to look at this as a backup plan situation. The Tampa Bay game is a 4:00 game, so Howard is a possibility. Gronk is out. Howard or Brait, I don't know. Flip a coin on that one. That's like which one of them happens to score a touchdown. I don't know how else you can look at that. Certainly Howard has been a little bit better. Everett for Seattle, also an 8:00 game. Who do I like out of those guys if I consider that Waller isn't going to play? Because I don't think Waller's going to play, personally. That's what I think. I'm just scrolling up and down the list looking for information that leads me in a different direction. My gut says O.J. Howard, but it's not. I don't love it. You might think that you're going to get more volume from Everett, but that would be rough. I mean, 5 targets is the most Everett has seen in any of the games, and that was in week 3. And as I scroll around here looking for these other players, which is a little more difficult because they're splitting time and they're not right in O.J. Howard. Here he is. Let's see. Last week it was 7 targets, 6 catches for O.J. Howard, 17 fantasy points. Cameron Brate, they're actually right in the same range. Howard is currently tight end 36. Brate is tight end 39. Brate has had his most targets was 6 for the year, and that was in week 4. So based on that, I probably say Howard is the backup plan that I would want to go with the most, go with the hot hand here. Obviously, it's National Tight End Week, so this is a big decision for you, as it always would be. But yeah, I say if Waller can't go, they're not going to have him out there. I can't imagine. If he's out there, then they must feel comfortable enough with him playing, and if that's the case, you probably have to also feel comfortable with putting your lineup and just hope that things go well. But I think your backup plan there is O.J. Howard to me. Hope that helps you out there, JJ. Hope whichever guy you get there, hope they crush it for you. Not Tom says Ricky Seals-Jones. Yeah, good. I got that right. Brick and Texture says not favored, so I'll go Anderson. Appreciate it. And as always, I say no, thank you guys for being here. Bill Romanowski says, I'm firing up Eli Mitchell tonight. Let's go. Eli Mitchell is making the lineup, and that doesn't bode well for Trey Sermon. Welcome back to the stream, Trey Sermon. Sorry to hear Bill Romanowski is playing Eli Mitchell today instead of you. We hope for better things there in San Francisco for you, Trey Sermon. But nonetheless, you know, if it's a backfield committee, as long as you guys get the win, that's all that matters, right? That's all you're looking for. Trey, you say morning, brother. I say morning to you. You say full PP. Sit one. Sit one, Eli Mitchell. This is great. Chase Edmonds or Pittman Jr. Thanks. Let's look at matchups. If you could literally sit Eli Mitchell, Trey Sermon, then you would be the starting running back for San Francisco. So I don't know why you wouldn't just try to go that way on this one. San Francisco home against Indy. Fantasy points to the running back spot. Indy 29th. That's the fourth fewest. Not a good matchup there. Chase Edmonds for Arizona against Houston. The matchup is better. Houston at the eighth spot. Again, I think game script could lead them more towards Connor than to Edmonds, but at the same time, that's the choice is not between Connor and Edmonds. The choice is between Edmonds and Eli Mitchell, and I would probably pick Edmonds if I was just looking at those two alone. Pittman Jr., let's see the matchup here for Indy. San Fran sits at, let's see, fantasy points to the wide receiver 17th, right in the middle. It's full PPR. Therefore, I probably sit Mitchell here. Chase Edmonds, the pass catcher out of the backfield. Unless the game script is completely where they're just blowing them out, you would think that to be there. And then Pittman has been playing well. I will go with Pittman and Chase Edmonds, and I will sit Mitchell here. And again, I see very close to game time, so I'm going to fly through these last comments and hopefully get everybody in here. Less information. Let's fly through them and get you your starts before we start here. Mark Ingram, Brandon Ayuk, non-PPR. Oh my, this is gross. I guess it has to be Ingram. I hit the neither button on this one. Non-PPR, I can't even going to say Mark Ingram, but I'm going to go Ingram. He's had a little bit of play lately, so I don't think I can trust Ayuk at all at this point. JJ says, hammer the cards betting-wise. Cole Ward, pick 2 for flex and running back, full PPR. I don't know which Williams this whole, so I'm going to assume it is Damian. I'm going to assume Daryl. Either one. I'm going to pick Cooks and Eli Mitchell. Yeah, I'm going to sit Eli Mitchell no matter which Williams this is. Take Cooks there. TS is here. Wide receivers Hopkins, Hollywood, and flexing Pittman. Should you plug Julio in there? No, not safe enough with Julio. I don't know if he'll make it through the game. I don't like it. Not Tom. Callaway or Ayuk. Something is telling me Ayuk might finally pop off. Better matchup for Callaway. I would go with Callaway here. I need to see it first from Ayuk before I go there. 1 minute to game time. Carlos Orozco, waiver wire pickups that can improve flex and wide receivers lineup. Ridley, Bateman, and Renfro. Let me go back and I don't know if I have the opportunity. Wow, I can't believe I'm this far behind on chats. I didn't realize I was this far behind. Also have Mooney on the bench. I'd like Mooney here. I'm going to have to get through the rest of these and miss the waiver wire here on this one because I just don't know off the top of my head. Flex and wide receivers. McKissick would be the guy I would look at to see if he's out there. And also have Ayuk and Corey Davis. Casey Dignan says Bateman or Callaway. I probably take Bateman in that choice. Clamped, Easy, Cordell Patterson or Swift. I like Swift better here over Patterson in that game. Davis or Booker. I like Davis. Larry just passed near Buffalo on our way from Letchworth State Park. Random fact. Like it, Larry. Rob Navarro says, helps. Thanks again. I say, nope, thank you. Casey Dignan. Pick 2. T. Higgins, Mooney, Bateman, Callaway. I'm going to pick Higgins and Mooney there. Sean F. is here. AJ Green or Elijah Mitchell. I will go Elijah Mitchell as 2. Volume play. LeBron's brain. I got a hot take. Boyd will outscore Higgins and Chase this week. Wow, interesting to know. We'll see what happens. I like it. I've had to play Tyler Boyd in one of my spots here. Your boy Mario, James Conner, or Damian Harris. Good matchup for Harris. I like Harris here. It's 1 o'clock, so hope all those got you just before game time started there. A lot of good chats there. Whew, a lot of information. I really like when we get to this point when it's close to game time, I always want to get all your chats to at least get you guys my thoughts. Understanding that at that point, I always prefer to like actually put those numbers up on the screen, look at the different stuff. I always want to get real data rather than me just flying through those and saying that. So understand that it's because it's game time here. I'm gonna get those picks in, but those picks I'm more relying on like thoughts and opinion at that point. Because as you guys know, especially if you're regulars, a lot of times I'll say, okay, I got an instinct, and then I'll put the data up and I'll say, okay, well, now let's reconsider the instinct. And so that kind of makes a difference for me as well as possibly for you guys. So understand that, you take it a little bit with a grain of salt when it comes to these later on picks here. And that's, again, I actually, on my service here, I have times that show me when these chats were. And I actually didn't realize that I was that far behind on a couple of chats. So those are, I would have rather given more information than what you got for that. Carlos, I'm going to go back to yours because in the chance that some of these options are players that are in the games or in the afternoon games, that's what I'll do is I'll take a look and see if there are any players as I look through the afternoon games that could still be available on your waiver wire. You've already got Renfro. So that would be a player that I would think might be there. In Detroit, you look at a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown that has had some thought in terms of a flex pickup. I don't see in the Houston-Arizona game anybody that I think that would. Chicago-Tampa Bay, would there be anybody there? Probably not, other than a Khalil Herbert who might split touches with Damian Williams. That's a possibility. Let's see who else. Indy and San Fran. Nyheim Hines is the guy who could be available for you. I don't know if I like him enough game script-wise in this game. And then New Orleans and Seattle, it's Marquez Callaway. And I like Marquez Callaway a lot this week, actually. He's a guy that I had as my number 2 waiver wire pickup this week for the week, actually. Not only for this week, but a good run of matchups for Callaway. I noted that in the next 4 weeks for Callaway, Seattle, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Tennessee. And the fantasy points allowed by each of those teams in order 10, 7, 8, and 1. So as long as, again, we don't ever want to see people injured. But with Michael Thomas still out with that injury and those many good matchups for Callaway, I get it. New Orleans offense kind of up and down, but you're looking for potential here. I think there is some potential there for Callaway. We'll see what happens this week. That's going to give us more information on what happens, with the rest of those games. But I think that Marquez Callaway is a very reasonrough thought to look at on the waiver wire and might potentially still be there for you right now. So I did want to jump back to that, Carlos, if you're still with us. Hopefully that does help you out here through all those thoughts and getting those guys that you want in your lineup to get you those W's. All right, we are at game time. It is time to go. Week 7 is already underway, but it's continuing now. We have, let's see. If you are wanting to watch the Bills, the Cowboys, the Chargers, the Vikings, the Jaguars, or the Steelers this week, you're out of luck. So you're going to have to pick up whatever game you have on your screen otherwise and roll with it. So, again, a lot of fantasy players out of play for that. The 6 picks game is closed, so I will remove this banner. Hopefully all you guys got your picks in. I will remind you, just as a reminder, that this is a weekly game, the 6 picks game. We keep these standings all season long. It's very simple. You're making your picks in the comments section on that video itself using PPR scoring, picking the players you think will have the better fantasy scoring day in each of those 6 matchups that occur within the same games. We keep the standings all season long, as I said, and the picks close at 1 o'clock on Sundays, which is right now. We remind you, last week the leader was Vansco with a perfect 5-0 week. We did have the one Christian McCaffrey and Delph matchup, which when a player is declared inactive before a game or when they're on the inactive list before a game, that matchup just goes away. That's why it's 5-0 instead of potentially 6. And then the overall leaderboard by percentage, and this is with a minimum of 2 weeks. Vansco extending that lead. Michael McFarland in 2nd and Bill Romanowski in 3rd. That is the 6 picks info. We hope that you enjoy that. There's no cost or anything like that. It's just simply a game for you guys, the viewers, to kind of play along and show off your fantasy football skills. So again, we are ready for week 7. I see some games on my screen already in action. We're going to see what happens in these games. A lot of interesting plays that you've had to make in your lineups this week, probably because of all those buys. We'll see how they work out and hopefully go ahead and get you all of those fantasy W's and moving your way towards getting closer to the playoffs and hopefully ultimately your fantasy football league championships. And that's going to do it for the TFF Live Sunday pregame show. We appreciate you being with us again this week. As we always say, good luck in fantasy. We'll see you next time.